aficionado, and this is my friend and colleague Hamp Overton. This is 100 Scariest, where we are looking for the scariest short streaming online. In this episode, we're talking about 2022's Backrooms, written and directed by Kane Parsons. The less than 10-minute short stars Henry Greber, Kane Parsons, and Blaine Salas. I came across this one in my research for my channel Vintage 8, but to be honest, this movie is now everywhere. The IMDb logline reads footage recovered from September 23rd, 1996. A cameraman helping to shoot an indie film suddenly finds himself wandering a liminal space. The film can be found on Kane Parsons' channel, Kane Pixels. So, what did you think, Hamp? What did you think of the Backrooms? Did you get lost in it?
Oh, you're right, Paul. It's everywhere right now. So it was a lot of fun. The idea that it's from 1996 is clever because it has that feel. I don't know if he actually shot it on a VHS camera, or if he shot it on a digital camera and applied a filter to it, and created the VHS look. But that seems to be something that a lot of filmmakers appreciate and enjoy, this sort of retro exploration of found footage from the VHS era. I know that there are other movies that have done that, and even before the VHS era, there was the Super 8 film era and all that kind of stuff. And you can, it's reminiscence of look at the Blair Witch Project, which was in black and white and things like that. The found footage genre. So this was a lot of fun, and it was fun to explore because it is, like you said, it's everywhere. So there's plenty to read up on it.
Well, what's wild is the way he made it, according to the interviews, is it was all made in Blender. Are you familiar with Blender?
Yes, we teach it at our program. I don't personally teach it, but yes, we do teach it at our program.
So he made it, then he put it on VHS, and then came off of VHS, like you were saying, to give it that VHS look.
Interesting. I did not know that was the process. I may have mentioned this beforehand, but it reminds me of the process that they did for Dune, where they shot on digital, transferred it to film to give it the film grain look, and then transferred it back to digital for exposition.
Some of the what film was it? I believe y'all were talking about film school. I vaguely remember you were talking about a movie where they shot it on film and they were stepping on the negatives to create a grimy look with that.
Oh, I think that was Zelig, Woody Allen's movie he made about a man who doesn't age, and you see him throughout historical times. And so they made an effort to degrade the footage. And that was one thing they did is they took the negative, or maybe not the negative, but maybe a work print or maybe an internegative, and they would throw it on the ground, a dirty ground, and walk on it so it had smears and imperfections in it. So, but maybe it's done other times too. But I do know that Woody Allen is pretty famous for having done that in that film.
Well, if you think about it, that's what they're doing here, right? With the back rooms. I mean, you create something that's nice, probably could be Ultra 4K or 1080, whatever, and then they're just
Hmm.
squeezing it down to crummy
Yeah, yeah.
VHS.
But that adds that aesthetic to it, it makes it a little more believable because now you have this additional layer of authenticity to it that you didn't have beforehand. If it looks too clean, too perfect, it doesn't look real. Think about Cloverfield. They shot that, it looked like with a handheld camera. And at times it looks pretty rough. It's hard to, because it doesn't have the perfection and the latitude that you expect from a professionally shot movie, I guess is what I'm getting at.
It's just interesting that people are wanting to recover or go back to the 90s. I can distinctly remember you in film school talking about how much you hated VHS and shooting on VHS and tape. I can
Well,
remember that as a student.
yeah, the thing that really bothered me was tape because the mechanisms that use tape broke all the time. So, so from a practical matter, we were sending cameras off to get repaired on a regular basis. And when we went to solid state media, I think the first ones we did were P2 cards. It ended that. It was, from a practical purpose, from a school purpose, it was it was great. The same thing goes with leaving tungsten light behind and going to LED lights. LED lights go forever. You don't have to buy new bulbs for them. You're not going to break a bulb when you drop an LED light, unlike with a tungsten light. So anything that made my job easier, I always applaud it. And that was one thing, leaving tape behind, whether it's digital or analog tape, it just made our lives a lot easier.
No, absolutely. And then you hear like today, I hear about a lot of filmmakers who shoot primarily in VHS. They're buying these old VHS cameras and they're making movies with them.
It's crazy. I had a student that was enamored with VHS, and she actually collected VHS tapes. She wanted to watch movies on VHS. And VHS only has a resolution of about 250 lines. I mean, it's terrible. Well, it has an aesthetic, I guess you might say, but compared to what the resolution you can see today, it's completely different. But yeah, it's nostalgia, is what it is. It's like when we made the transition to CDs and we left behind cassette tapes and record players. People still love the record players because they feel it has a warmer feel to it, or has more depth or something. But
I guess it's another tool in the palette, so to speak.
it is, and it's fun because you can do things like what this guy did, which is he really took advantage of it, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't pick up on the fact that this was supposed to have occurred in the 90s. I thought, well, it's the VHS aesthetic that we're going for. Um, but that was good. Yeah.
But you know what? I think the VHS aesthetic is what makes it believable. Because, like, if you look really close at it, you can see that it's made with Blender. You can tell that it's designed, not shot, you know?
Gotcha.
And,
Wait,
but,
at times, especially the creature. The creature
yeah.
looks very CGI. But other than that, I guess you had a better eye for it than I did. By adding the imperfections of VHS to it. And I think I don't know if when he did the VHS imperfection, if he added in the little fuzzes in there where it seems to break up from time to time. I'm not sure if that happened in the transfer or if he put those in digitally afterwards. But all of that stuff, you're right. It helps hide the imperfections that maybe, or maybe it's too clean. If you do it in Blender, the scene looks too clean, or the carpet looks too clean. I think one of his goals was, and I have noted here that it's dingy and yellow. Um, it doesn't look healthy when you're in that space. And I think that helped by creating it sort of, it's if it was tack sharp, and I compare it to like Severance, which was inspired partially by this series, not the original one that we're going to talk about today in the series that he followed up with. But Severance it's sharp as nails, it's just so clean. The walls are white, the image is sharp, everything is just, 4K. And although it's the same premise with those spaces that seem to go on forever, it feels different because it doesn't have that worn out, dingy look that this has.
Yeah, and I agree. It makes me think about like when we first went from HD to standard def. They were talking about like when you upres Star Trek, for instance. I can
Right.
remember everybody saying, well, now you can see the makeup. And I've revisited Star Trek, and you absolutely can tell that you can just see the makeup.
Yeah, they did makeup for standard definition. They didn't do makeup for, for
Right?
4K.
Which is a whole different beast. Which might be also part of the reasons why movies grew up. I mean, TV shows grew up, because there was a certain format with TV that grew up and that got more like movies,
Hmm.
and I think
Hmm.
that might be part of it. And now we're seeing this. So when you look at Kane Parsons' movie, he's doing the same thing but backwards. Well, this looks too real or too fake, so I'm going to make it standard def so it looks more real. So
Right. Hmm. But I think that is an aesthetic, though. You're right. It absolutely has a practical um, usefulness. Uh, but we are living and every generation goes through this. His generation is nostalgic for the 90s, and the generation before him was for the 80s and maybe the 70s, and the generation before them was for. Think about. I was thinking about George Lucas made the movie American Graffiti in the 70s, which was a nostalgic look back on the 50s. So it's not a new idea to look lovingly back on the past. Once you get old enough and you've lived through the past, you go, well, it wasn't all that. So it's just part of it. And so he's going on and exploring it with the VHS thing because he missed that aspect of in his childhood. You know, I had VHS tapes when rental houses first came out, and you may remember this too. You know, it was VHS that you would get. You'd get a VHS tape, and you'd have to rewind the tape and return it, and you couldn't skip ahead. You couldn't. I mean, you could fast forward, but but it was a different world, and so I much prefer streaming because you don't have to go to the store. You don't have to return it afterwards. You don't get late fees for not returning it. You can't damage it. There's
That's
all
why I
these
can't
things that make
afford.
it.
Oh, you went too far.
Yeah, yeah. There's all these things that just make it so much easier, but in the in the in the way of making it easier, you lose some of that tactile appeal, you know? It's, you know, one of the best things I enjoyed doing was going to the video store and looking at the wall of videotapes, and they had the news section and maybe had it broken up by genres, and it was fun to look for videotape. Um, it's not the same going online and going to Netflix or Prime or HBO or something, and it's just all this stuff, and they it's almost overwhelming, you know. And they feed you a certain amount on the front page, but then you got to dig and dig and dig if you really want to find something interesting or new. And every time you go to IMDb to put in a movie name to see where it is, I don't subscribe to that streaming service. It's like it's on some Indian streaming service or something like that. I'm like, well, I don't have that.
Well, if this wouldn't happen if you were in Blockbuster, right? But looking at the film itself, just looking at what the experience is, you know, it is a competent found footage movie without the special effects.
It really is. I have to give him credit because when you watch the CGI stuff where the camera's wiggling around and sometimes it's going down to the ground and things like that, it really does make it. Oh, and when he zooms in and you hear the noise bzzz of it moving in, all of that just works really, really well. He did a very complete and thorough job in understanding how to create it. He did his research, and the application, you know, really, really works well.
It does, and it's the bookends really make it too. How they do the real world stuff. I love the after effects falling to the earth at the end. That is absolutely that poor guy, right? I mean, Jesus, he goes to this awful place, and when he escapes, he's in like a worse situation.
Well, it couldn't have been too bad because he kept filming the entire time.
Yeah, I've watched three of them at this point. I've watched the first two, and then the third one's a lot longer at 40 minutes. And it's funny that they're all found footage. But I
They
mean,
are.
he couldn't pull off if it wasn't right.
Hmm.
His limitations? Because if you put people in front of it, it kind of.
Well, let me go back to the actual film itself. Um, he's with his friends making a movie, and he falls somewhere,
Hmm.
and
In the back.
does a hole open up in the ground? Do his friends see him disappear, or what happens to them? And then when he returns, he's up in the sky now and falling. What does that mean? What
Well, to me, do you have an answer in your mind, or you're looking?
I
What?
have no idea. You you did a whole video on this, so I'm hoping you're a source of information because I don't
Well,
know.
well,
I'll be honest. I don't fully understand what he's trying to say with the beginning of leaving what we'll call the real world, entering the back room area, and then when he returns, I don't understand. Uh, I mean, he had to end it somehow. Obviously, I don't fully understand what happened at the end either.
So, to my understanding, and this is a little bit of my interpretation mixed with my understanding, there are going to be many other people who disagree because the Backrooms predates his production. He did not originate the Backrooms. This comes from 4chan. Somebody posts a picture, and then the whole community makes a mythology around it. He later on takes the mythology and he makes a short film around it. That short film becomes hugely popular.
So
He
the back room was an idea.
Yeah, community created idea before he even got there.
Good to know.
It is, and that's interesting because almost like Slender Man, right?
Oh
Slender
yeah.
Man was something a bunch of people created online, then people started making movies from it. That's what he did. My understanding, like the back rooms, is when's the last time you played video games? Probably a long time ago.
I play them on my phone.
On
you know.
phone.
Yeah.
So if you play 3D games, especially during the PlayStation era, I don't play games as much anymore, but there would be a sense if you're jumping around the maps of the games, you could
Hmm.
sometimes jump out of the map, and then you would be in the area around the map,
Okay.
and you could never get back in. It's a glitch. And the Backrooms is kind of that. It's
That
like
makes sense.
you're falling out of the map, out of reality, out of where you're supposed to be, into this area where that basically surrounds it, the unfinished area.
That makes sense because when I was reading up on this, it was referring to liminal space. And you probably know this, that it was based on I'm going to mispronounce this, liminality,
Yeah.
liminality by Charles Van Gennep in the early 20th centuries. Did you read about
No,
him?
I've not read about that. You mentioned I think last show you mentioned that a little bit, right?
And basically, he created the preliminary, the postliminary, and basically, liminarity is in between. And it's basically a transitional period between what was and what's next. And so he said there's three stages, and the middle stage is what we're discussing right now, which is this. He says it's the quality of ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stage, and participants no longer hold the pre-ritual status, but have not yet begun the transition to the status they will hold when the rite is completed. So this was his concept, and examples can be if you think of like a graduation ceremony. You've completed high school, but you haven't started, work or maybe college, but you're at a ceremony. So that would be the in-between stage where you are right there. Another might be if you think about uh, when you die, being Catholic, you live and you might go to purgatory, which would be the in-between stage before you go on to the afterlife. And so there's these in-between stages that exists all throughout, and he was exploring these and and figuring out what they are, and that sort of created the idea, uh, and they even say war. You can get onto bigger time frames. You could have a space between peace and war, or between wars. It's just this space in between events that you would have in life, or that a society can have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it eventually evolved. He originally talked about just time, but then they talked about place. It became an idea for using place also. And that's when things like a waiting room is that kind of space. Oh, you're going to the doctor, you're going to see the accountant, and then you wait, and then you see the accountant. So it's that in between space before you move on. Um, so that's kind of the genesis of it, and so the idea or the thought behind it has really only existed for about 100 years. It's evolved as people have built upon the idea, but it's really not that old, at least the contemporary one. And then, of course, the latest evolution of it is when the horror concept was adapted, and that's what we're looking at here. It's now used in horror, where you're trapped in this space, and how do you get out? And although Severance isn't a horror film, it does kind of fit in that same category. You remember The Cube from the 90s, the movie The
I do.
Cube?
This
Yeah.
would be a good comparison, the cube.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a definite relation there.
Yeah, they're in one cube, they leave it, they're in another cube, and and they wonder how they got there, and they wonder how they're going to get out, and so it's just this continuing. And the director, that's Vinceo, I think his name is Natalie. He did another movie called In the Tall Grass, which is kind of a similar concept. I don't know if you saw that one. You're trapped in tall
Yeah.
grass. How do you get out of that also? So the concept is has been around for a while. One of my favorite from the 70s is, if you look at in the Soviet era, they made a movie Stalker, which it had a big impact on me because it was something I had never seen before. And when you watch a lot of movies like we do, and you see one that kind of really grabs you, and you go, "Wow, this movie was made back in 1979." And it's just an amazing film of exploration. You're trying to find the spots, you're not sure where it's going. Um, so it's quasi horror, not quite full horror, but it certainly has the idea, the concept of the liminal space. Um, and so it's used quite a bit, and it becomes more and more and more. But as I mentioned, the big thing that really brought it over into the threshold is the book House of Leaves, and apparently that kind of brought it back into the consciousness of what we're doing, and that inspired, even though it had popped up periodically. Apparently House of Leaves is, I haven't read the book. Apparently it's a challenge to read where he's in a house and someone has written about the house in here, and as the son who moved in this house with his family explores the house, he discovers that the house is changing while he's exploring, and he's making annotations in the book. So when you're reading the book, you're also reading the annotations to learn the changes. So it's just very interesting. So I think that that book probably is what inspired more recent things like Severance. I would certainly say Vivarium, if you saw that movie, things of that. And I would certainly say that it probably also inspired this short film too.
Well, I also think, we look at this as like from the success point of it, right? This thing has been viewed a whopping number of times. I mean, this
Like
one,
79 million,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
70 million. This is a huge short film
Hmm.
by very definition. y- I look at this movie as this is going to be inspiring a whole new crop of filmmakers. That's what this short is going to
Yeah,
do.
it already is, I think, like we said, Severance was partially inspired by it. So
Yeah.
it what now I just mentioned that book that sort of kickstarted some of it. Do you think this type of film could have had the success that it's having at another period of time in
Well,
society?
Well, that was kind of where I was going to go with that. I think a lot of this has to do with COVID.
Yeah. We live in a new world.
Yeah, exactly. Like my thing is you talk about liminal spaces, right? The kid who made this lived through a liminal time.
He
He
did.
grew up, his formative years would have been in a time like that.
Hmm.
You start thinking about it,
I think he made it right before COVID, right? Didn't he make it in 2019?
2022.
Oh, my mistake. Okay. All right.
So you start thinking about that.
It dovetails perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you start thinking about that, like what they were experiencing. I mean, I remember it clearly. I mean, I'm sure you do too. You go to supermarket, it was empty. Like weren't used to that. You go to a ball game, empty. You're on the street, empty. There are photos that you can see, empty.
Yeah, and even walking around the neighborhood, I didn't see people too. It was you go to a pool, it'd be empty. Yeah, it was
And and then you
very
mix this
different.
with the current generation has different opportunities. Because I don't think it's an accident that it's corporate spaces. The back room looks like one giant corporate space
No, you're
hallway.
right. You're absolutely right.
They're different opportunities and they feel differently about the structures that we are comfortable with. I think, and I don't think it's an accident that they're looking at the 90s. That was a lot of people consider the 90s the last era that we were online, but also when things were not so chaotic. Because after 9/11, things get dicey for a while. America or the country, and this isn't my opinions. By the way, these are things I've heard and read and other podcasts by other scholars smarter than I. They're just saying that when you look at your horror films, you look you're looking at what Americans are
Sure,
dealing.
it's a reflection of society. Yeah.
Yeah, what is our PTSD? They said after 9/11 it was a lot of violent torture porn kind of horror films. They said that was what we were going through. I think Backrooms is our COVID PTSD revealing itself, specifically
Reflection
the
of that.
generation.
We're not. Yeah, and of course, between those two, we also had the financial crisis too, which was
Which is corporate, which is the corporate world that they don't
yeah,
understand is not helping them out.
they don't trust, or
They
what
don't
a lot of
trust
people
them.
don't trust. Right. Yeah.
So all this stuff is kind of mixing in together, and I think they're nostalgic for the '90s because I think they listened to their parents and they're like, "Well, man, I was born after things were good," you know. Then there's also the distrust, like I do think there's something about a VHS tape. Well, what is on that VHS tape? It could be anything. There's that little mystery, and then you marry all that stuff together. Plus, we look at how successful this is. One of the things I've read is this is the first time teens and 20-year-olds have returned to the movies since COVID.
I saw the news yesterday that movie theaters actually have an increase in attendance over last year, and that's yeah, and it's young people. It's the younger generations, teenagers and early 20s that are going to the movies.
I think it's time. I think this weekend that just passed, we're looking at a fundamental shift in that could be the next decade of Hollywood. It really could be. It's like the Marvel movies where that was everything. Everything was a comic book. We could be looking at a time where everything's going to have this YouTube connection, some following preceding it. It won't
It
be
kind
that
of feels
long.
like we're already there, Paul. I mean, think about the movie we talked about. Was it last week or when was it we talked about it? Smile, remember?
Yeah, Smile.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
Laura hasn't slept. I mean,
yeah, and the very first movie we talked about also,
Lights Out. Yep,
Lights Out. So
probably the first to prove the pipeline exists.
yeah, I think these movies are producers and studio executives are clearly mining that. But even back in the 90s, you know, producers and executives were mining film festivals. That's where, you know, your Robert Rodriguez came from, your Kevin Smith came from, your Steven Soderbergh. They were popping up in festivals. That's where they were discovered. The festivals are no longer the source. YouTube is now the source of the new of the next filmmaker. Yeah.
And I think it's going to be that way for a while. I mean, Kane Parsons' story is now going to be in the legends of Steven Spielberg at this point. Like, I don't know if he's going to have a future. I don't know if he wants to do this. I know he's going to do the sequel. I don't know what he wants to do. He's not really said what he wants beyond
How
these
old is he?
movies. 20. He's 20. He's got a long
What
way to
what
go.
20-year-old knows what they, what they
No, but
want?
exactly. So
I
that's
didn't
the
know what I
thing.
wanted to do when I was 20. I was
But
like, I guess I'll finish college.
yeah, exactly. So beyond that, like it it really is an amazing thing. And then you have Curry Barker, the one we're going to talk about next time,
hmm
right behind him. And I mean,
But it's interesting also is that society is making kids grow up faster too.
yes.
And so, I made an analogy when I was 20, but 20-year-olds were different, when I was age 20 versus today. You have access to so much information that you simply know more. I don't know if you might be wiser also, but you're just more prepared to go out there and make a decision. At least you can be. You have the resources literally at your fingertips on the internet. So
This isn't unusual, though. Think of your greatest generation, 17, 18-year-olds going to war.
yes, but they were. I mean, you're absolutely right. They listened to adults telling them to do that, though.
Hmm.
Here, Kane Parson, he did it on his own. He didn't have an adult telling him, hey, go on 4channel and get some information and make this movie. He wasn't given those instructions, as far as I know. And so it's a little bit different in that, and plus, we probably all younger generations don't trust the older generations either. They're like, you guys are pulling the ladder up behind you, you know? So,
I mean, maybe he does feel like maybe they do feel like they have to. Maybe they feel like they do need to create their opportunity. That they're
they
not
they
enough.
do they do, but on the flip side, uh, they have the tools at their fingertips to
Yes.
do this. When I was 19, I would have to shoot on 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter if I could afford it. And then you cut it on a flatbed, I guess. If you could find one, you had to rent one. And then you take your work print and you go and get that uh, transferred to, you have your negative cut to your work print, and then your negative is then make a final print from that. And before you do that, you got to have your audio mixed by an. You can't. do it on your own the way you can do it now. The tools that you have, audio tools, image tools, Blender, learning Blender, you can learn it on your own. You can go to YouTube and watch videos. It's just that wasn't you. You couldn't do that. You could write a book on a typewriter, um, but you couldn't do what they do now. And so and then AI is coming along too. It's a whole different world.
It absolutely is. And, I think we are looking at the fulfillment of the promise that was made back when I was in film school. And what I mean is when DSLR started becoming film cameras.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's really when that started happening, things felt like it started moving a lot faster.
It democratized. I mean, that's what these cameras are doing and they're democratizing the art form. And so that's probably why about that time is when all the superhero movies came about because they could do CGI stuff that you couldn't do.
Hmm.
And so that's what movies are constantly trying to stay ahead of the technology that anyone can get their hands onto. Because why go see a movie that can be shot with the same technology I have? At least for mass appeal, your big tentpole movies. If you look at smaller movies, they're shot. Probably you and I could go out and shoot it with the gear we have at our universities, right? Um, but the big tentpole ones that would take more. Uh, so
I mean, but in a sense, this was a $10 million movie shot in what is an old abandoned mall. I think they used Blender in that too, if I'm not mistaken. So,
well, if he's anything like the guy that lights out, if you read about or go to his website, he talks about how even after he shot his feature length version of that movie, he went back and, and did a lot of the digital effects and things in there. He added more graffiti to walls. He did other stuff like that because he had the skill set, and so he wasn't happy with it. So he went in and did it to a feature length film that was being paid for by a studio. He went back and did some of the effects or changed things on it.
because he wasn't, because that's what he was, a VFX artist.
He was VSX. Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, he knew what he was doing, and I mean that's the nature of the world we're going into. And I think this is a sign that we're going to see smaller budgeted features get in there. I mean, like This is $10 million, but like you think about what was spent in terms of his time and making this channel. From my understanding, I was listening to a podcast. They were talking to him after he made the first one, the very first one.
Interesting. So
So
they saw it already.
they
Hmm.
saw it and it blew up, and it got in front of the producer because I believe their kid said, "Hey, check this out. This is awesome. Why don't you make a movie about this?" So
Yeah.
his kid, I think his kid told him that, and they reached out, and they didn't know until they reached out that he was 16 years old. But
Please
that
put your parents on the
brilliant.
phone with us.
Yeah, but what's funny? What's so brilliant about that is they took his audience. It would not have succeeded without him.
Hmm. I think you're on to a very big thing that's been a key to Hollywood success, or at least Hollywood to knock on your door, and that's if you have a built-in audience. It's
Yes.
why you have famous people in movies. It's why you have musicians in movies because they already have an audience. Famous actors can always get work because they already have an audience. So and that's what he did. He had an audience. He made an audience, and sure, let's make a movie for him. We know those people will most likely go and see it. There's 70 million people right there, or 75 million people that are going to see this movie. So let's go ahead and make it.
Exactly. And I think that's another thing that this movie's capitalizing on. It's not just a story they were all familiar with. He's one of them. He's part of their generation. They feel like they're being heard by his success.
That's true, especially the way this movie came about.
Yes.
Correct. Hmm.
So this movie is not repeatable in the degree that it happened. This is a perfect storm of technology, of an idea that was going through the internet consciousness, um, previous disasters, a person who took advantage of it. There are a lot of things. The business as a whole, all these things come together to create this opportunity. And and I mean that's what it's represented by. And look, the movie works. What's remarkable about it is it follows a lot of the rules that a lot of the successful ones that we've talked about before. The dialogue's minimum. The guy is talking behind the camera a little bit. Some of the dialogue does feel like something 16-year-old would say, but it feels realistic. It moves. It's simple.
It
Character
does move.
appears
It
lost,
and it
and
follows the basic formula.
yeah,
You put someone in a space and release a monster on them, and
exactly.
that's exactly what he did here.
And then they get what they want, but they fall 100 feet from the air, into their doom, right? But it really is. It's a well-made short, and if you watch the rest of his stuff, he keeps producing along the same lines. You can see, honestly, you look at his movies on his YouTube channel, it's almost like film school. He's perfecting this
Mm,
model,
yeah,
and then he gets to this movie, he's ready to go.
interesting, interesting.
It's a fascinating. I mean, it's a changing world. Like I told you, this movie I think will be something that I think this is going to be something people are going to talk about for a while. I think this is the kind of like myth that'll get spread in film
This
school.
this is this is this year's or this decade's Blair Witch. It's the same exact thing right here. So,
But it could even be more than that. Like, I mean, Kane Parsons really could be his story. Because, you think about, like, Steven Spielberg sneaking on the lot, right? He
right,
was
right.
sneaking on the lot until he got discovered. Now it's going to be like, well, I made a short, and then here you
And did
go.
it ever go to festivals or was it
Yeah,
simply on YouTube?
simply on YouTube.
That's very interesting, because festivals for a while have been the place to find new innovative talent, and uh, YouTube's now the place, right?
And this is going to affect film festivals. I mean, we could venture a guess they're going to start taking more stuff that they think could work on YouTube in there because they're going to want to keep relevant. This movie, for lack of better words, it's going to be before Backrooms and after Backrooms. Whether how you feel about the feature or not, I haven't seen it yet, but that's kind of where we're at in terms of short films.
Hmm.
Amazing, kind of amazing
Well,
through it.
it's an evolution, Paul, and we've witnessed evolutions in the past, and this is just another step in the evolution. So,
It'd be fascinating in a decade to see where this ends up.
mhm.
It'd be fascinating. All right, three
Okay, so
comments.
we'll make a note. Come back in 10 years.
Will we remember in 10 years?
Talk about Backroom 12 that just came out.
And the funny thing is, King Parsons will only be 30. Only 30 years old. And
And he
but man,
says,
this
I'm going
guy's
to
been around
retire.
forever.
I'm going to retire. I've done everything I wanted to do.
Exactly. So the comment: this man is actually insane. He manages to create horror that has scared the 90% of Hollywood horror films. I love that comment. That one I've seen a couple of times on a bunch of them.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. We'll go by newest because I know there has to be some recency here. 12 minutes ago. Gosh, I can't believe I just saw you in the theaters, bro. Congrats. Still beats walking around and trying to find your way in a department store. There you go. So next show, we're gonna go with the other side of things. The director of Obsession, Curry Barker. We're gonna visit one of his shorts, The Chair. Have you seen The Chair?
No, I haven't. I didn't want to see it before we talked because I want to be surprised when I watch it. So
What's funny is his story is just as fascinating
it
as
is.
Backrooms.
Yeah, milk and cereal. I see that everywhere. So it's kind of curious. Keeps cropping up again and again and again.
I'd recommend watching that.
Hmm.
It's fascinating. It's a very interesting time to be a filmmaker.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, if that's it, I guess I'm Paul. This is Hamp. If you have something scary you want us to watch, let us know. Like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.